Welcome to Bristol Bay Native Corporation's podcast series, Mug Up with BBNC. Mug Up is a term commonly used in the Bristol Bay region. It refers to getting together with friends and family for a casual gathering over a warm cup of coffee or tea. It's all about sharing stories, experiences, and connecting with one another, which is what you can expect from this podcast series. Mug Up with BBNC is hosted by Carmel Ingebretson, Kayla Wilson, and Carissa Larson from BBNC's communications team, where we sit down, enjoy a cup of coffee, and hear from BBNC employees, community leaders, and passionate individuals who are engaged in BBNC's mission of enriching our Native way of life. Whether you're a seasoned shareholder or a curious descendant, BBNC's podcasts are created to captivate, enlighten, and inspire. Thank you so much for joining us.
Welcome back to Mug Up with BBNC, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Today we have a very special guest with us, Ms. Hazel Nelson. She is on BBNC's board and has served with us, or served for the corporation since 2018. Welcome, Hazel.
Thank you. I'm sure glad to be here this morning for your Mug Up. I needed a good Mug Up.
We're so happy to have you. You're our first guest. Did you know that?
Oh my gosh. I should have brought you flowers.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Hazel with us today. And we're going to dive in a little bit into BBNC's voting process and Proxy and annual meeting stuff. And Hazel is chair of the Nominating Governance Committee, and so that's why we invited her to chat today. Hazel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where did you grow up?
I'm from Igigik, and my family actually mostly lived on the north side of the Igigik River. I'm the youngest in the family, and everyone in my family went to the Mission Lodge School and then to Dillingham High School or middle school. In fact, one of my sisters was one of the first students when KDLG got started. It was a class project.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
And it was her class that got it started. So I'm just thinking about her this morning as we're doing this.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Oh, wait. Some more about Igigik. So I was 18 when I got elected to our village corporation, and I was on that for a long time. Years later, I learned the reason why they wanted me to get involved was because a lot of the elders were tired of going to Board of Fish and Board of Game meetings to testify, so they wanted me to start doing it. So I was 18 when I had to go to the first. It was a Board of Fish meeting in Anchorage, and I was really scared. But there was a woman who was on the Board of Fish at the time, and I talked with her, and I think she could tell I was really nervous, so she kind of took me under her wing, and I had a lot more courage when I was up at the table testifying. As you know, those Board of Fish meetings are always about fighting over fish, and it was a heck of a way to get introduced to politics.
Yeah.
And that must have led into your career, right?
It did, yes, for, well, I won't say how many years, but gee, Christmas. I've been to a lot of Board of Fish meetings, and I worked at the Department of Fish and Game as the director for Subsistence Division, and was involved with the North Pacific Fishery Management Council when the CDQ program was created. I was on the BBNC board for years before I ever thought I would get on the BBNC board, but all of the fisheries issues is something that I've been involved with for most of my life, basically since I was 18. But we have a lot of good leaders in fisheries, and one of them is Robin Samuelson, as you know, and I learned a lot from him and Harvey, and still look to him for his leadership on fisheries issues. He's doing a good job for our region.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear you were so involved at a young age. It's exciting to see when younger people are involved in our community like that.
Yeah. You know what? It got easier as the years went on, but I think one thing that all of us folks who grew up in villages know is we can do anything because we have to, right? Nobody else is going to do it for us. We have to just pull up our boots and get out there and get it done. And that means testifying to protect our community's interests and our fisheries resources. And I also had to go to Board of Game meetings, and at the time our caribou herd was crashing on the North Peninsula. And anyway, learning how to work in the state regulatory arena was quite a learning experience. I highly recommend it to any young people who are interested in learning how to speak out on behalf of your community, because that's one of the most meaningful ways to contribute to protecting your future resources. But you know, on the BBNC board, it's a very different role. It is learning how to protect all of our resources, not just the fish and game, but our human resources are the most important resources to protect, and we sure have challenges as a board. All the boards in the region are, struggling with how to deal with the, not just the economy, but all the things that our young people are facing, and
Yeah.
it's quite a challenge.
What made you want to serve on BBNC's board? How did that interest you and make you decide to pursue it?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because I sure put a lot of thought into it before I made the decision. Just prior to applying for the board, I was working at Fish and Game as the director for Subsistence Division, and when I applied for that job working for a state agency, I knew that it would be a tall order and a very serious commitment, not just to my time, but to what it means to me. Because when you take on a job, it does become your life. I mean, I think that there's a better balance these days for how folks balance their personal life with how they get work done. But a director of a state division is a statewide job. I wasn't working for Bristol Bay. I was working for every single person on the North Slope, the Yukon, the Kuskokwim, Kodiak, the entire Aleutians, the Bering Straits, and all of those people relied on me to make sure that Subsistence Division was doing everything it could to help them meet their subsistence needs. And taking that job to heart took a lot. It was a very serious commitment, and a big part of that is the team that you work with. And at the time, the person who was the governor was very supportive of Subsistence Division. In fact, during that time, they provided the highest amount of funding Subsistence Division has ever had, and then the next administration, which was another set of 4 years, so over 8-year span, I worked for 2 different governors and 2 different commissioners in a statewide position, and both of them were very, very supportive of subsistence. I left because of an incoming governor who I didn't agree with. My principles I knew were a lot different, and based on my principles, I chose to put my heart where my region is. To put all the tools and experience that I learned in that job towards helping my own region and helping my own people. That's why I applied for the board.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. The people you work with make such a big difference on how you feel all throughout your life, really. I mean, and the boards that you choose to serve on, the organizations that you put your time and effort for, they all have an impact on your everyday life because you have such a big responsibility as a board member to make decisions that can have such a big impact on people and land and resources. So I applaud you for making such a big decision. I know those are hard decisions to make, but we're really happy to have you representing our people.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I love Bristol Bay. I mean, I grew up with learning about Bristol Bay from going to Board of Fish meetings and Board of Game meetings.
Wow.
Meeting people at those meetings from all the different villages and learning how fisheries occur. You know, they're different in all of our communities. How we live our lives has so much to offer when we experience it in another community and how they do things. And I mean, all of our values, we look out our window as we grow up, and what we see out on the water and on the landscape and what the families are doing, that's the fabric of our lives. That's where our values are compelled, and how each village accomplishes what they're doing with their communities and families. That's the most important stuff of our whole life. And just meeting people from across Bristol Bay in those meetings really helped me get grounded. And I saw our region from a much broader perspective than just Igigik. You know, the folks down in the Chignik regions their challenges and values and everything about it is very unique, and it's a beautiful place down there. I don't know if so you've been,
Yeah, we just had the opportunity to travel to Chignik Lake earlier this year, and that was both of our first times there, and it was such an amazing experience.
So beautiful.
Yeah, my family's from Chignik Bay.
Wow.
Yeah, and my brothers, when they were younger, went to the Board of Fish meetings, and they got really passionate about all the stuff going on in their fishery. And I grew up fishing, or commercial fishing, in Chignik Bay, and I remember how different it was when I was 4 and 5, and there were so many boats and hundreds of people, and now it's so different. There are maybe 11 boats this past season.
That's very different.
Yeah, it's a big change.
Yeah. Chignik Bay well, every single one of those communities are just so picturesque.
Yeah.
The mountains and the water, so beautiful.
Yeah, we flew on the milk run on the way back to Anchorage, so we got to see, we left Chignik Lake and went to Perryville, and then Port Hayden, then Chignik Bay, then Pilot Point, and then Anchorage.
Oh yeah, we got the Bristol Bay tour, baby. It was awesome.
It was a very long day, but it was so cool to see all these communities for the first time.
You know, that is so amazing and unique that your travels, when you looked out from one village to another, when you went down and as you came back, one body of water was the Bering Sea and the other was the Gulf of Alaska. Two entirely different oceans and ecosystems.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was very cool.
I don't know of any other regions that have, like the Alaska Peninsula, where two different bodies of water can be looked out at from an airplane.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, very. And the weather systems, I mean, that's why the weather's so awful on the peninsula, because one side of water's fighting the other side. It's like,
Yeah.
This is my storm. No, this is my storm.
All right, Hazel, can you help our listeners understand why board elections are so crucial for the future of BBNC?
Yeah, because I recognize the board members around the table are going to be the ones at the end of the day who will be making strategic decisions and guiding the corporation for the long term.
Can you talk about the role that the BBNC board plays into BBNC and its shareholders?
Sure. You know, one of the things that we just finished up was a 10-year strategy. And I think BBNC used to focus more on a shorter-term strategy, but this board wanted a 10-year strategy that we would be picking up and reassessing every 3 years. So it would be on the 3rd year and then the 6th year, and then after the 6th year it'll be, of course it has to be the 9th anyway because it's expiring on the 10th year. So one of the items that was important to us was also emphasizing more on governance, recognizing that our society is changing. And, you know, times are changing, and it does require looking a little bit more at strengthening the governance structure in how we make decisions. And I think it does reflect in the quality of the strategic plan that we made for 10 years. I'm confident that how we structured it was done well because we incorporated several really strong governance principles, which I won't go into now, but I think that's one of the important things. Another is we have to look at our communities and how to invest in them, especially now with the economy, and we're facing in our communities a lot of out-migration, part of which is, you know, one of the things that frustrates me is when the legislature decided, well, if a community doesn't have 10 kids to go to school, we have to shut the school down. I'd like to know how they came up with that, because I think that was a detriment to the entire state. It was an artificially set number that did no good to keeping our communities stronger, which keeps our communities less reliant on state funding so that people and families can live in their own communities, have stronger local economies. People don't have to travel in order to work, and kids can live in their own homes and go to school. So I won't go into that too much more, but looking at how to protect our communities through local investments, looking at business ventures where it's possible for local businesses in our communities can succeed. And, you know, the other thing is we're responsible for safeguarding the interests of shareholders. And one of, I guess, a good example of how the BBNC board has been doing that is through fighting the Pebble mine. I know that not everyone agrees with that, but I think the majority has concluded that if we lose our fisheries because of the mine, what's left? It's not just about earning money. It's us. I mean, literally, our DNA is made up of salmon, and it's such an integral part of our fabric and how our values are learned, how our cultures were created, that there's no way that Bristol Bay can trade in salmon for a mining company that isn't even an American mining company. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's way too temporary, and we've been around here for too many centuries to have such a temporary giveaway that permanently poisons our resources. Anyway, that's just my opinion. But I think that when it comes to safeguarding the interests of shareholders, one of the best examples is our fight against the Pebble mine. And we still have a ways to go.
And I know the board makes these decisions based on research that it directs the management team to do. So I know several surveys for getting shareholders' opinions were done so that the board can make an informed decision, that its shareholders are feeling and desiring the board to do. So I think BBNC and its board and management team really take that into consideration when making decisions on behalf of the shareholders. Just making sure that it's fully understood what the shareholders want. And overwhelmingly, our shareholders oppose Pebble Mine.
Yes. We have a good, strong backbone when it comes to protecting our families and our futures, and that is our fight against Pebble.
Yeah.
So every spring, BBNC does some board recruitment efforts where, we push out on social media, our website, local stations.
Postcards, emails.
Yeah, just a call out for applicants to apply to the board. Anybody that serves as a candidate on BBNC's Proxy has been thoroughly vetted by the Nominations and Governance Committee. So they have to fill out an application, a questionnaire, and they have to do an interview with the committee. Is that right?
Yes. The Nominations and Governance Committee goes through all the applications and tries to pick the candidates who they think would advance to an interview. So
you go through that process to determine who's going to, make a positive impact for the corporation and bring skills and ability to the board. And that's how you decide who you'll interview. And then after the interviews happen, the Nominations and Governance Committee, from my understanding, makes a recommendation to the full board.
Yes. I think the best way to describe how the committee approaches it is looking at the current issues that the board is facing. And as you know, our region, maybe it's much like many regions across Alaska, but we're all facing some really common challenges when it comes to protecting our economy. For us in particular, the Pebble mine fight has been an important fight. So that's always an important thing that or I should say, this current board has been looking at how applicants see the Pebble mine and their understanding and experience is really important in seeing the bigger picture for how to address and how to balance issues such as protection and development. Because we also, aside from protecting our ability to fish, we also have resources in our region that we need to develop. And we have gravel resources. I think the corporation has long ago done a full assessment of the other subsurface resources that we can develop, and to some extent that has been pursued. Looking at candidates' experience in addressing issues around their communities. So it's always helpful to have experience beyond just your own village. To have experience that reflects your knowledge of seeing there needs to be balance but also that we can't just have, all protection and no development when it comes to our resources. We need to have a balanced approach. And I mean, although I'm trying to describe some of the things the committee looks at, I'm sharing what goes through my mind. I can't speak for other committee members, but I know that we have really healthy discussions when it comes to making sure that the people who are interviewed are ones who we really believe can bring a high quality of experience and wisdom and knowledge to the table to help us make decisions, because it's tough. We need to make sure that the elders who really rely on the dividends are not just left behind as we look at enrolling descendants. And so looking for a balanced attitude about something that important for our region, I think, is important. There's folks who are going hungry because they don't have enough money to pay for oil, or they're using their propane stove to heat their homes because they can't get a job. And having shareholders who recognize things like that, and putting that in perspective about how important it is for us to work with our communities and build local economies, regional development projects that can make a meaningful difference for people to have groceries and have heating at the same time. Hope I'm not getting too far in the weeds about these issues, but these are real issues that our shareholders have to grapple with. And so looking for candidates who have wisdom and knowledge and experience in their viewpoint, how they express their viewpoint, is really important in showing that, okay, this person would be a great team member for how to plan for the future, how to make decisions for BBNC. It's a tall order. You know what? No one board member has the lock on answers, but working together as a team, we come up with, I think, some really good solutions. And thanks to the amazing staff that we have here, thank God for our amazing staff who does a lot of the heavy lifting to, get the work in front of us, get the products in front of us to help make good decisions, gathering the information and helping us decide different ways to, for instance, how to approach including the descendants issue, to do it in a stepwise fashion instead of upsetting the apple cart. We have awesome staff to help make good decisions like that too.
Yeah, thank you for explaining the role of the board and what board members do at BBNC and how they impact what goes on in the decision making. And so kind of the reason you're here is to talk about the proxy voting process, because we have an election coming up and the annual meeting here in about a month on October 7th. So for those who may not know, can you explain what voting a proxy means?
So if I could just take the liberty of recalling out loud how things were back when my village corporation got started, and everybody else's, I know all the villages were experiencing the same thing, along with our regional corporation, BBNC. What an exciting challenge it must have been, but like all the other regional ANCSA corporations, we're really spread out, and you have to fly or get into a boat, if possible, to go somewhere else to get the votes, to make sure that you have a quorum to hold a meeting. And it was the introduction of the concept of a proxy. And, introducing that concept of this piece of paper, if you sign it, means someone you trust will be allowed to cast your votes for you, because you may not be able to go to where the annual meeting is because it's not going to be in your village. Especially during a time when families were, like our family, we weren't living in the village. We lived on the other side of the river. A lot of people back then lived up the river. So it wasn't just a normal thing to race to Igigik to go to a meeting. That didn't even happen until the corporations were formed. I think, long before there were tribal councils that held meetings, there were the informal leaders of the communities who held meetings in what's the word? In a mud house, basically. In a traditional kushguk. I think my mom called it kushguk. But yeah, it was a subterranean home. It wasn't a home, it was a meeting house. But, they didn't have proxies for that. And so until the corporations were formed, there was no concept about, I have to go to a meeting. There was no proxy because I can't go. So all of those things were really new to our village, to everybody. It was a new concept, and it required a lot of trust. And today, that trust for giving your proxy to typically the BBNC board, who are not up for election, to cast their votes is the way it's done. That's how it was done when it began. But it's now just like a matter of course, a normal thing to do. But back when I was a little kid, it was a brand new concept. And it's still a practical way of making sure that people are able to vote for who they want on the board. For whatever reason they want. And that's the great thing about the freedom that we have. It's something that our own people have, that we can apply. Of course we can as American citizens living in a free country too, when we cast our votes in the elections. But this is our version. And I really appreciate and enjoy the way that BBNC really fosters and ensures that the way the votes are cast are done in the way that our shareholders can trust, that they can rely on the process. And that's something, as the chair of the Nominations and Governance Committee, it's something that I really live by because I truly believe in it. And it's probably because I was born at a time when I saw the whole concept of corporation and proxies and voting become a new thing that was really exciting and special. And it was all about recognizing our Native people's ownership to vote for ourselves and that we own land.
Wow.
That's really cool to hear about, how far proxy voting has come from that time. I will not take it for granted again that I could just log into my phone and vote my proxy really quick.
Yeah, we sure have it easy these days when it comes to voting. It sure is handy when it comes to using your phone.
Yeah.
It's amazing how far we've come.
Okay, so getting into the specifics of our voting process, can you tell us some key dates and deadlines that shareholders should mark on their calendars?
Oh boy, yeah, I would absolutely. If you use your calendar on your iPhone, please mark September 13th at 5 p.m. because that's a key deadline for you to win an early bird prize. I know those early bird prizes are pretty juicy. I can't remember how big they are, but I have always wanted to win early bird
I
prize.
know, and unfortunately, board and staff are not eligible to win.
Yeah, I know.
But I believe we have a lot of cash prizes, but I believe you can win up to $3,500 cash, which who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
And you'll probably get into this, but the cool thing about voting early bird is that if you vote early bird, you're also eligible for our final deadline prizes. And then if you vote online before the early bird deadline, you're not only eligible for early bird, but final and online prizes. So there's over 30 cash prizes that you can win.
There's 39.
Almost 40.
40.
Wow.
I know.
So if you vote, like Kayla said, online before September 13th, you're eligible for all 39 cash prizes.
Yeah, so that's your best bet for the most prizes. You can vote online at bbncvote.net. And then can you tell us when the final deadline is to vote your proxy?
Yeah, I think the final deadline is Wednesday, October 4th
Yeah.
at 5 p.m.
Mhm.
So, you know, I always encourage folks to just vote the early bird so that you get it done.
Mm-hmm.
It's like doing something as simple and essential as brush your teeth, fill out your proxy, get it done. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And it's that easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say right when you get your packet in. I think we give shareholders like 3 weeks before the early bird deadline when your packet comes in. It kind of depends on where you live because sometimes it takes a little longer for shareholders to get their packets. But I'd say right when you get your packet in, just vote.
Yeah, and if you just go online to bbncvote.net, you don't even need your packet. You can just log in right there. I think you need your last for your social, your date of birth, and your PIN, which we have an online PIN lookup tool that you can use right there on the website and access your online proxy. Really simple and fast.
Yeah, and then for shareholders that opt in for electronic communications, which you won't get your paper in the mail, but you'll just get an email every year that says, hey, here's your PIN, and you'll get the annual report and proxy via email, which then it comes to your email like that, super quick. So you don't have to wait for it.
And when you click the link in your email, it automatically fills in your PIN, so all you have to do is enter your date of birth and last for your social, and you're right in there.
Mm-hmm. And you can go in and you can read about the board members, you can see their picture and their bios, and vote for who you want.
So easy.
So easy. And even if you have one share, sometimes people think that I only have one share, my vote doesn't really matter, but it really does.
It totally matters. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was really surprised to learn was that 54% of our enrolled shareholders are between the ages of 18 to 50. That's more than half. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them probably have just one or, 3, 4, 5, not many shares. Mm-hmm. And that 54% wins a whole bunch of door prizes. Mm-hmm. So I strongly recommend, whether you have one share or whatever the number is, your odds are really high of winning a door prize. So don't lose the opportunity for winning that $3,500 early bird prize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or any of the others. Voting online, and also going back to the folks who are descendants who have inherited shares. I do strongly encourage, I don't have kids of my own, but I have lots of nieces and nephews who I love dearly, and they all tell me I'm their favorite aunt.
Oh, I bet you are.
Oh, thank you. I'm a little particular about making sure to encourage them to vote, because they know that they don't have very many shares, but it is their way to be included and to be recognized and to make sure that their part of the corporation is being represented. Mm-hmm. And that 1% is just as important as somebody who owns, a lot more shares. Mm-hmm. It is. every bit as important because it's their voice and it's their ownership. So no matter how many shares you have, please vote.
Yeah, and one easy way to remind your friends and family is just to go on our social media channels and click forward and send it as a message to them as a reminder, tag them in the comments.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other dates that we forgot? We should mention that you can also vote at the annual meeting or online during the annual meeting. Right? Forgot what times.
Yeah, so every year BBNC has a live stream of the annual meeting available, webcast and audio. But if you're join the webcast or have access to join online, the past couple years we've had online ballots available during the annual meeting. So even if you submit a proxy, you can still go in and update your vote the day of the meeting. And that will be at bbncvote.net. And the online ballots will be available from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. on October 7th at bbncvote.net. So, yeah, that's another cool way to make sure your voice is heard. But like we said, if you submit a proxy and get that done, just in case something comes up and you're not able to join the webcast or attend the annual meeting, your vote will still be counted. So we really encourage folks to submit that proxy.
Yeah, I see that we already sent everything out. It went out on August 18th, and
Yep.
I really appreciated reading the annual report.
Oh,
there was
good.
some really cool things. Every year there's really cool stories about our people from around the region, and I love seeing who gets featured every year. And it's very cool seeing more and more younger people involved, and the emphasis that BBNC has now on reinforcing and displaying our cultural values through the culture camp and all the other things. I know it took 50 years to get where we are now, and a lot of the heavy work for establishing our financial strength took a lot of work. And now we can take a breath and start focusing more on solidifying our culture. I know that we're losing a lot of elders, and it's really cool seeing more and more young people learning our language and the dances, and it's all that stuff that is the most important things in our lives, and I love seeing it.
Yeah.
I love how BBNC is emphasizing that now, including it in all the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, that's one of our biggest projects of the year, the annual report. So this year was really special, focusing on so many different people and cultures. Bristol Bay is so unique with representing 3 different cultures. And so that was really fun. And every year I learn more and more about our region and people. So it's very cool.
Yes, it is. It enriches all of us.
So a part of the informational meetings that have been happening this past month, and there are a couple others coming up before the annual meeting, and then the annual meeting, how does BBNC solicit shareholder feedback at those meetings?
Every way possible, as far as I've seen. I think that BBNC has been actually very thorough in approaching shareholders to get their feedback. The informational meetings are really important, and if at all possible, I encourage shareholders to come to them so that they can listen to what folks have to say. And I know it's not always easy to get up to a microphone, but I strongly encourage folks to ask their questions, express their concerns, because your voice matters. You may just think it's only you, but a lot of times when somebody says something, there's a whole bunch of other people in the room who are thinking that. They just don't want to go up and say it. So get up and speak up for a lot of other people too who are probably wondering the same question. And don't ever feel shy or embarrassed. I always enjoy watching shareholders who have all the courage I wish I had, march right up to that microphone and tell the board their concerns. I really enjoy that. And I think it's very important. One of the things that I shared with you, that my mom was a woman of few words, and she did stuff more than she talked about anything. And so all of us kids learned by watching our mom, and of course by listening to our dad, because he was the talker. But watching our mom in relation to going up to the microphone, casting your vote, all those things we see our mother do. And a lot of times our dad does it, of course. My experience is watching my mom be a doer and being an example of courage to speak up and to get things done. So I encourage all the moms, go out there and keep showing your kids how to get things done, because they need it, especially when it comes to casting that, if you gave them one share, by golly, help them vote that one share so that they grow up knowing that their voice counts. That's what it comes down to. And I know as descendants are enrolled, they will acquire their own shares. I guess what I see is, whether it's one share or several, it's still a step in the direction of being counted, of being mattered. Your voice matters. And so going back to the informational meetings, I like to see a lot of folks engaged and asking good questions about what BBNC is doing. As you all have heard many times over the years, board members and of course Jason and our other executives, they work really hard in trying to do what the shareholders want, what the board members direct them to do, because that's what the shareholders want, and they're not afraid to answer the questions. So don't feel like your question is too hard. I'm sure they enjoy a good question to chew on in front of everyone. And Jason always does a great job in making sure to be transparent and full disclosure for our shareholders.
At the annual meeting, shareholders will sometimes have questions that we're unfortunately unable to get to, and if we run out of time, for example, so they can always email us and we always get back to them with an answer, whether we have to submit it to management or anyone at the corporation. If it's a land question, we may submit it to the land department, but we'll always get back to your question if you have one.
It's so much easier these days to get in touch with your corporation, whether it's through email, calling the office, social media. Our lines and inboxes are always open. So we do get a lot of inquiries on social media, and like Kayla mentioned, we always get back to those. So outside of info and annual meetings, for shareholders that aren't able to attend those, they're always available to, or I guess they're always able to get in touch with us here at BBNC anytime.
I think the electronic engagement, or the media engagement, if that's the newer way to phrase it, has been an incredible addition to giving more current information faster to answer shareholders' questions. I mean, throughout the years, I've been to so many annual meetings, and I won't, but I could talk about it back before we had so much media uses and electronics that allow instant communication. It used to be more of just verbal answers. And while that was limited at the time, there wasn't quite as much outreach for, if your questions are laid out for everybody to see at the same time and be answered at the same time. The whole difference now through electronics is just incredible. There is no reason for any regional corporation not to be able to answer shareholders' questions.
Yeah.
I am really proud of BBNC for how sincerely everybody here takes the responsibility in providing good communication to answering shareholder questions and capturing their concerns. We are an amazing corporation. I know I may sound biased, but let me give you an example of reality. In 1991, I began a 3-year scholarship. It was through the University of Fairbanks, and the 3-year scholarship, Eileen Sylvester was the only other person from Bristol Bay who was chosen with me, but the Kellogg Foundation funded a scholarship program for years through UAF, and it was called the Alaska Native Leadership Program. And we were the last of that program. And when we started it, there were 30 of us. When we started it, I was like, I was so honored and just like excited to be part of this leadership from across the state. And I was way closer to 30 back then than I am now. But I was also like, they told us that you're the last group that we're funding. And we were all like, why? And they said, because the Native corporations are not doing this for their own people. But guess what? BBNC started TWOW.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't like in correlation, it wasn't in response to what the Kellogg Foundation stopped funding, but it was somewhere around that time, within that decade, that it was called ANLP, Alaska Native Leadership Project. When that ended, BBNC started TWOW, which was the same intent, to build leadership in the pipeline to help take over the governance of our Native corporations. So that is an example that makes me really proud of all the Native corporations. We started doing it that long ago, and we're still doing it. I don't know how many other ANCs do anything like TWOW or what the Kellogg Foundation used to fund, but I'm really proud of BBNC for that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple other corporations that have kind of modeled a leadership program after BBNC's TWOW program. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Hazel, so much for coming in, for being our first guest, and for talking about voting and Proxy and being on the board. We really love having you on the board. So we appreciate you taking time out of your day to come in and talk to us and talk to all of our shareholders and followers about such an important topic.
Well, thank you. I know I'm not the only board member who really enjoys engaging with our younger generations, with each of you who are carrying the heavy lifting for running the corporation and representing us and showing the other young people that this is how it's done. You know what? It doesn't matter how old we get, we all still think we're 17 or 29 or whatever. It's such a pleasure to be working with you, with your generation. And I know I'm not the only board member who really treasures this opportunity, because it's our honor to be working with you. It's our honor to be representing our young people, because you are our future. Each of you are our future. You are our hope. So thank you. Stay engaged. keep watching BBNC and vote, because your voice matters.
We are the shareholders of Bristol Bay Native Corporation. We each have stories to tell, histories to make, and gifts to give. Each of us unique, sharing our strengths toward a single shared purpose: to steward our region and our native way of life. We are the shareholders of Bristol Bay Native Corporation, but we share so much more than a corporation.